So the brewing method we'll be demonstrating here today is called the Chemex. It's one of my personal favorites, and although it's become relatively popular lately, the Chemex has actually been around since like 1942 when it was created. This method produces a little bit smoother, cleaner, and fuller body coffee than your typical drip coffee, and honestly it looks really cool in the process, so it's definitely one of my favorites. Alright, to get my brewing process started here, I have my hot water source here. I have my scale for measuring out my coffee grinder. What I have here is a thicker Chemex type filter designed for the Chemex itself. And then of course I have my Chemex Brewer itself there. I'll get started here just by getting my hot water going, and then we'll get brewing here shortly. Today we have our Kai Roasters signature Revive blend here. It's a combination of Central and South American coffees. I'm going to measure out 50 grams of these whole beans, which I'll then combine with 700 grams of hot water from my kettle. Alright, now that I've got this coffee ground here to a consistency that's a little bit coarser than the drip coffee grind, but a little bit finer than a French press, I'm going to take my hot water here, which is now heated to about 202. A good rule of thumb on that, if you don't have a thermometer, is to you can take your kettle to a boiling point, pull it off the heat source for about 30 seconds or so, and that should put you right where you want to be for the coffee. I'm going to wet my filter here just to get some of that paper flavor out of it. Also helps it stick in there a little bit better. Now I'll take my coffee grinds and I'm going to pour them into this filter, this pre-wetted filter here. Get them all in there. I'm going to give it a little shake just to kind of even out those coffee grinds. And I'll take my hot water. I want to measure out shoot for 100 grams is what I want to do. This is a process called blooming, and what it does is it allows the coffee to get some of that carbon dioxide burned off of there, and it's the right place to start when you're brewing your coffee. So I've got 100 grams there. I'm going to let that sit for about 30 to 45 seconds or so, and then we'll start with the next process. Alright, now that coffee's had about 30 to 45 seconds to bloom there, I'm going to start with my first of 3 cycles, each of which will be 200 grams of this water. Once I pour that through, I'm going to let it settle down, let that coffee really settle down in the cone there before I start my next cycle. The goal of this process is to hit right about the 4 to 5 minute mark total brew time. If you get your coffee a little too fine, you might find that it gets stuck, and that's going to take a little bit longer than that. If your coffee's too coarse, the water's really going to run straight on through, and you're going to lose a lot of that flavor that you want to get out of this coffee. Notice I'm doing this really slow pour, circular motion, starting in the middle, working my way to the outside. It just assures that all those coffee grounds are getting a good, even, smooth pour of water. Alright, now with our final pour of 200 grams here, we'll be ready to enjoy this in just a moment. Now that we've finished brewing here, now's the good part. We get to pour it in our cup, we get to drink it and enjoy it. This recipe with the 700 grams and the 50 grams of coffee is good for 2 cups. Which is why it's one of my favorites. My wife and I enjoy this about every morning, and we hope you do too.